Habari gani, karibuni. Thank you all for being here with us again. Today we have invited our brother and our sister to give us an update on a conversation that we started last year, right? The apparent imperialistic strategy of getting us again to work against our African brothers and sisters. This is the deployment of troops from Kenya to Haiti is what we're talking about. My name is Nduku Mulumba, an African woman who has joined with my African brother, Milton Alimadi, to counter the false narrative of Western media that has been propagated for years against Africa and Africans. So we continue to do that by bringing you African stories and covering Africans and Africa from an African perspective. Alimadi, I think I've said enough Africans for today. Please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so sisters and brothers, karibuni, welcome to our weekly Chuo Kikuu. Chuo Kikuu, of course, is the Kiswahili word for university, where we discuss different challenging issues on a weekly basis. And yes, today we're looking at the conversation over the proposed deployment of soldiers, or rather an armed force or police force from a number of countries, including Kenya. Kenya is supposed to take the lead on this. And obviously there's the issue of whether it's constitutional or not, whether it should be done at all. So we have some very well-placed people to join us in this conversation today. Back to you.
I have to say it has been my joy watching both Ekuru Aukot and Mama Ézili Dantó working together. This is Pan-Africanism in its essence. So, Brother Ekuru Aukot, if you could please introduce yourself to the community, let them know who you are and what you do.
Okay. Is it good evening or good morning, everyone, or whatever we are? So, as been said, my name is Ekuru Aukot. I am from what I call the Kenya of the North, Turkana, the cradle of humankind. I'm a lawyer by profession. I practice as such in the law firm of EA Law Consulting, also trading as Ekuru Aukot and Company Advocates. I don't know what I can say, but I'm also a party founder of Third Way Alliance Kenya, which is a political party that is keen on transformational leadership in Kenya and hopefully in Africa as well. I've been keen on founding collaboration in African countries with people keen on challenging the status quo. So I was in the team that wrote Kenya's Constitution. I was the Chief Executive Director and member of the Committee of Experts. I've worked in a number of countries in Africa, including Liberia, South Sudan, and Tunisia, Egypt, and others, just in constitution-making processes. So I'm an enthusiast of change, I would say. I think, and I'm also partly very actively interested in political participation, because I do believe that the major challenge that we have in Africa is that a lot of us don't participate in politics.
Right.
We say politics is dirty, and that's the reason why the most deplorables are our leaders. Right. And every time I keep on reminding them of, was it Plato that says that one of the consequences of not participating in politics is that we'll be governed by our inferiors. Right. And I think that's the challenge we find ourselves in Africa today.
Hey.
Well put.
So
that's
put. Who I am.
Well put for sure. Mama Dantó, I'm waiting to see whether we can bring her up. There we go. There we go. Welcome. Yes, please. If you can introduce yourself. Your mic is muted. Looking
Happy
beautiful,
Sunday, everyone. Welcome to my ancestral brother there in Kenya.
Thank you, Ézili. Nice to see you, Ézili.
And thank you, Nduku. So my name is Ézili Dantó. I'm a lawyer, been practicing for a long time, and I I run the Free Haiti Movement and the Haitian Lawyers Leadership Network. That's what I do. I'm also a award-winning poet and so on. But with respect to legal and defending, I run the Free Haiti Movement and the Haitian Lawyers Leadership Network. I was born in Haiti and raised in America when my parents left because of the Duvalier regime, and became a lawyer here, and then went back as one of the lawyers for the democratically elected president, Jean-Bertrand Aristide. I've lived through two U.S. coup d'etat and the whole debacle of bringing back the Duvalieres
Right.
folks and dictatorship under the guise of democracy that the OAS and the regional collaborators are legitimizing, and that the UN constantly legitimizes for the funding it gets from the United States.
Yes. Thank you. And we thank you both for the work that you're doing. Like I said, I have been watching and cheering you on. I don't know if you've heard my cheers from here, but they've been every day. I've been yes, yes, yes. So we're talking about the deployment of troops from Kenya to Haiti that you all heard last year was announced. We spoke about it with Mama Dantó and our sister Pierre, and as we all are agreeing, or at least we agreed on that during that conversation, we believe this is once again imperialism trying to use us to do its dirty work, right? So you've both argued that this action by both Haiti and Kenya is against the constitutions of both nations. Could you please, we're starting with Mama Dantó, could you please explain this in terms that anyone who has not taken any law degree or anyone who has not had political science can understand?
Certainly. So we have a constitution that rules the state. And it says that no, and I urge all of you, if you actually want to see the complaint, to go to my website, EZILIDANTO.com, and you will actually read what I'm going to summarize for you today. So, and also we have a press release. I would love for you to circulate it amongst your network. As you notice, we don't get any publicity or any media. If it wasn't for platforms like this, you may not even know that there is lawyers from Haiti who have been working against the imperialism, the fake election, the fake aid, the fake benevolence of the US as they continue to use us for whatever, according to the Monroe Doctrine, you all know that the United States believes we are their backyard, all our resources are their reserves, and that they must keep us contained in poverty so that when they have their wars, they can just take our men like they did in Vietnam, like they're doing now in Jordan and Yemen through the Biden program. So that's what they do. And they make our people so desperate that they will become an Ariel Henry. They're educated coons. And so that's what we have. Actually, I've been doing law for so long and dealing with the corruption of the Haitian state for so long, I wasn't even going to file a case until I spoke to Dr. Ekuru Aukot. I saw that I was very inspired by his case. I have to say that. So we thought at first we would write a brief, a mercurius brief to support his case. And we went to lawyers. We were in the process of putting together that. And then he said, listen, file a case in Haiti. And we can use that. And so that would be good support. So we filed. And what we're saying essentially is this. Number one, let me just say, I revere the work of Ekuru Aukot as a lawyer. I think every lawyer across the African diaspora should really look at the fact that Judge Chacha Mitwa overrule the UN. I think this is a beginning for the 21st century African. I really do. And he deserves all of that. So obviously the United States have constantly destroyed Haitian law, although it continually tells you that we're the one that's corrupt. But just give you one example. In 2021, the puppet Duvalieres president that he had put in power, his term had expired. And the closest we have to a Supreme Court in Haiti said his term had expired. But the United States and 3 US, I think, at least 1 or 2 Ivy League schools said, based on Haitian law, that his term had expired. So he wouldn't have never been in office to be assassinated by US agent. And then for us to have this chaos of the Duvalieres right-wing paramilitary groups taken over, right? So the US is responsible for destroying our laws, right? Letting this man stay in office when he shouldn't have been in office in the very beginning because it was a fake election legitimized by the OS. But even then, he had already done his turn in terms of term. So what we say is that the Haiti Constitution says that you can't bring foreign troops onto this land, period. And that Ariel Henry, who has no mandate, no legitimacy, who was appointed by a tweet by a US ambassador. And I honestly tell everyone this all the time. My work as an attorney is to get rid of the illegitimacy of 154 nations controlling, 5 nations controlling 153. That's not democracy. Also, the other danger, the highest danger that I have lived in all of my life with regards to US policy are what they call their diplomats. What the right wing calls the bureaucracy, the globalists. These are people who are put into the foreign service, and they are everywhere in Africa doing exactly what they're doing in Haiti. And I want African intellectuals to focus on the foreign service of the European states, because someone like Pamela White or Michelle Sisson, who probably wouldn't have been in office if it wasn't for the civil rights movement because of the misogyny of the US. The Black Panthers are, 17 years old and they're still in prison at 65 now. White women got the benefit of affirmative action and landed in these spaces. And instead of doing something different from the good old boys, they just are doing their job, which is what they tell me, which is they have become millionaires. Now we look at the corrupt African politicians. No one is looking at the corrupt embassy people. And if I do nothing, I want you all to remember that there's a core group of nations in Haiti. They totally destroy the idea of neutrality. That same group, almost the same group, is in the Congo. No matter who becomes president in the United States or France or Canada, they control because they are career so-called diplomats. But really, they should be brought up. Kenneth Merton should be brought up for war crimes in Haiti. So should Ellen Sisson. So should Ellen Lalume, Michelle Sisson, Ellen Lalume, Pamela White. They have spent their whole entire career. They know more than any new president that comes into office. And they work with the Syrian, Lebanese, and Israelis in Haiti. Our Constitution says you can't have foreign troops in this country. And even if you could, Ariel Henry wasn't elected by anyone and has no legal authority to bind us to any agreement. So that is our case. And we suggest that since Haiti doesn't manufacture guns, that those guns coming not to the Haitian police, but to the paramilitary gangs are deliberate. And the United States needs to account for that, as well as the Dominican Republic, which gives these emaciated, desperate, hungry Haitian men guns to go do their business the way they did with the Tonton Macoute back in the day. So this is our case. We suggest that there is a resolution at the UN that talks about where the guns come from. And if the US and the internationals had any morality or decency, they would enforce that, as opposed to trying to reinvent and bring back the images of slavery when Africans sold Africans to the European.
Exactly. Thank you so much. And they would, if they were not the ones selling the guns, right? They would, but it would be a conflict of interest on themselves because they are the ones selling the guns. My brother, Ekuru Aukot, please share with us the perspective of the Kenyan Constitution, please.
Okay, so first of all, I think it's just to underscore the fact that our Constitution, just like any other, is about the will of the people. And in post-colonial Africa, one can observe that most constitutions in post-colonial Africa try to change the idea of power emanating from the people themselves. So for our Constitution, for example, at Article 1, it speaks about the sovereign authority vests in the people of Kenya, that they can exercise that authority directly or indirectly through their elected representatives. Now, having said that, so when we were doing the Constitution of Kenya, and I was in the team that wrote this country's Constitution, we created Article 240 of the Constitution of Kenya that talks about the Kenya Defense Forces and what we call the police service. Now, we came from a history where the police were described as a force. They were described as police force. But Kenyans say that we don't want a force to operate within our own territory. We want it to be a service.
Exactly.
So the Kenya Police Service must operate within the jurisdiction of the Republic of Kenya and to serve Kenyans. If we must export any overarmed security, it must be the force. And the force is the Kenya Army, the Air Force, and the Navy. And Article 240 is explicit on that. So when President William Ruto was ill-advised that, or on his own agreement with Joe Biden, that we can export police officers to Haiti, and I went to court and said, no, this is wrong. First of all, you cannot use the police service outside Kenya. It's within the jurisdiction of Kenya. If you must, then you need to talk about the police, the force, the Kenya Defense Forces. But over and above that, I thought to myself, we looked at the history of Haiti. They were the French who were defeated by our brothers and sisters in Haiti, culminating to their independence on 1st of January 1804. Then came the Americans, the Canadians, and then after the Brazilians. And you look at the spirit of the resilience of our people in Haiti, of Black people in Haiti. So I asked myself, why then should America use a Black nation like Kenya to go and occupy a fellow Black country? Haiti, for all intents and purposes, must be respected as one of the greatest nations in the world, because these are the people who first of all liberated Black people.
Yes.
In history.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that Kenya should not be used to clean up the mess that was created by the Americans, Europeans, Canadians, and wherever. I mean, there's a very simple example I like to use. If you see the arrest of, say, a Black man in the United States of America, in whatever city it may be, you will see almost 10, 20 police officers surrounding that Black man.
Right.
So really, if there is surplus of police service, it cannot be from Kenya. It is the United States of America. And like Sister Ézili Dantó said, the gangs in Haiti are armed through Florida. Haiti doesn't manufacture any guns. And to be honest with you, I was so disappointed with my former employer, the United Nations, because it is the same United Nations that says that for one policeman must serve at least 450 civilian populations.
Mm-hmm.
In Kenya, we're talking about one policeman for about 1,150 persons. So how is it that then the UN can actually push Kenya to go to Haiti when we have our own internal insecurity issues? I come from a place called Kapedo, that's the northern part of Kenya, where the sound of a gun and bullet is like breakfast, lunch, and dinner, meaning we have serious insecurity issues there. How is it that we cannot fix our own insecurity situation, but we want to be used to invade? I mean, this is invasion. We want to invade a fellow Black nation, African country. So this is the reason why I went to court, because it is against our constitution, it's against our law, and I also don't think it is right for us to support the imperialism of Americans, because right now I'm so happy that many Kenyans are actually educated on what is in Haiti. We know it's not about the gangs in Haiti. We know it's about the resources in Haiti, the oil, the copper, the gold, the iridium, and all the natural resources that we have in Haiti. And I just feel that, if Haiti had a proper government, if Haiti had a parliament that can actually make the request, because listen, under our own law, the National Police Service Act, it says that under Article 107, 108, and 109, that the president may deploy the police service, but upon request from a reciprocating government. Now, the truth for the matter is, we know there isn't really a legitimate government in Haiti.
Right.
I mean, even if there was, it has to be a president heading a government legitimately elected that must make that request. Ariel Henry, we know, is an imposition on the people of Haiti.
Right.
As a prime minister, he does not have such powers constitutionally. So we brought all these arguments, and luckily for us, Justice Chacha Mwita agreed with our arguments. And, I'm very happy for the people of Haiti. We would love to help the people of Haiti as Kenyans, but not in the way in which it's being proposed by the UN and the USA. Because we know what their interest in Haiti really is. It's not about really helping, Haiti people, because after all, they're the ones harming those gangs.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if they wanted to help, they had many opportunities over the last 2 centuries to do so. So it seems to me that this is a situation where African lawyers working in a Pan-African spirit has been able to checkmate the system so far, at least for the time being. So I have a couple of just quick questions, and then.
So like Sister Ézili likes to say, We brought down the entire UN, the USA, Europe, and all their allies. But that's the beauty of the rule of law. But it also means that we have to have a spirited group of individuals
Yes.
that can actually take these issues head on.
Yes.
And I'm happy to have been part and parcel of it.
Okay, so now when Ruto says he's still going to do it anyway, is that just bluster? He's just blustering because he knows he really cannot do it anyway. And then the other observation is, I want to look beyond this issue of deployment. Deployment. I want us to move it to a different terrain. How can we best, as African people globally, help the people of Haiti? What are some of the things we can do now that you've been able to conduct a successful, at least so far, intervention? Where can we build that up to? How can we get other African intellectuals, other African organizations involved to go beyond just band-aid measures on a constant basis to really help the people of Haiti and to uplift them to the next level? So essentially what I'm asking is, what is to be done in your view going forward?
So I'll give you two examples. I've worked in a number of countries that emerged from conflict. One of them was Liberia after a 14-year-old war, South Sudan, and I participated in a bit of the constitution-making process in the during the Arab Spring, Tunisia, Egypt, and the rest. I think if we really have to help Haiti, is to encourage some degree of truth and reconciliation. There has to be some sort of a national conversation. What is it that we want as a people, as a nation? And I was telling one of members of parliament from Ruto's camp that if we truly want to help Haiti, then let's help Haiti go towards a democracy. Let's prepare Haiti to have a conversation amongst themselves. Let's hold a proper election. Let's have a proper government in place. But I think over and above that, my feeling is that we, the so-called intellectuals in Africa, have left the politics to the worst, to the most deplorable amongst us. We say that politics is dirty. But you see, when we say politics is dirty, then we are leaving it to the bad people to participate in politics. And they are the ones actually who begin to control our society. That's why they lack a conscience to say that our brothers in Haiti and sisters in Haiti need our help. So we must participate in our socio-political affairs of our society. And I believe that conversation is something that we can take over to Haiti. I believe we can bring those gangs to talk about the nation, the great nation of Haiti. I mean, I've since become a student of history, thanks to my sister, Ézili Dantó, for feeding me with a lot of information.
Yes.
And I think we must have a conversation, a societal conversation. You know, and I hope, hopefully, we can have as many African leaders, African intellectuals speak about Haiti. You know, not just the isolated us. I know we are very few now talking about Haiti, but even in Kenya right now, I'm so excited that a lot of people are speaking about Haiti. They're asking questions. And that for me is the beginning of how can we help Haiti. But we lack a political leadership that can say, these are our brothers and sisters, what can we do? We don't have to be told by Uncle Tom, go and invade Haiti.
Right.
I abhor that fact that it has to be Uncle Tom that says, go to Haiti. I wish we could say, you know, we as African, and listen, I don't like coup d'etats, but I love what's happening in Francophone Africa.
West Africa,
Niger, Mali, Guinea, and I like the messaging. The messaging is we want to end imperialism in Africa.
Exactly.
There is no more siphoning of our natural resources.
Right.
We must talk about the unity of Africa. That is a language I want to hear, and I want to see that from elected leaders in Africa. You know, and I really wish the AU, AU, African Union, could actually say, you know what, we have an African nation in the Caribbean
Exactly.
that really needs our help.
Correct.
That conversation is not there, but I am so happy that we actually placing that conversation on the table right now as we speak. And I can tell you, Kenyans are asking questions because Haiti right now is a topical subject in Kenya, and I believe in the world as well.
Very good. The same observation from our sister. Your response to that?
I'd like to go a little deeper.
Yes, please.
I always used to say, it's been a while since I've said it, if you want to come and help me, you were wasting your time. If your liberation is wind up in my liberation, then let's work together. The idea that we are so different in Haiti than the rest of the African world is a European concept.
Right.
Everything they're doing to us, they start with us as the guinea pig, right? We won our independence, and then they realized there were two African sort of leadership. There was Jean-Jacques Dessalines, who wanted a Black-ruled independent nation. And then there was Toussaint, who thought the only thing he could do within the concept of global power is be a Black-ruled colony. Toussaint Louverture's template is this template all over the Caribbean and all over Africa, yet they killed him for it. Let's understand that. The same thing in America domestically, with the domestic imperialism in America against the Black women's children and Black men's children. You have Malcolm and Martin, Dessalines and Toussaint. These templates go everywhere in Africa. And if you want my work as a descendant of Jean-Jacques Dessalines, I can tell you, you must first understand those two ways of fighting. Integration with injustice or independence. Africans still haven't figured out that if Dessalines didn't do what he did, separate from the European and say no, we all would have chains in our foot. So for me, all the planet's liberation is meshed up in the liberation of everyone on this planet, and specifically the least of the least, the one they demonize the most, Jean-Jacques Dessalines' people. So no, we're not looking for charity. What we want the world to understand, and if Kenyans are listening to me, if any of the African nations are listening to me, Haiti has enough resources to make every Haitian a millionaire, just like the Congo has for people in the Congo. Let's start there, Africans. Are we going to? We have been ruled by Eurasians and how they fight since the High Coast went into Egypt or Kemet.
Right.
That's over 3,600 years. Are we going to constantly be doing this democracy?
Right. Thank you.
Honestly, what is democracy but a way for the elite to make you think you have a choice? They give you the Republicans and the Democrats, and every year they play, or every 4 years they play musical chair, and you are constantly at the bottom. My children are constantly worldwide at the bottom.
Right.
So I say Africans need to sit down and reimagine the world.
Yes.
Imagine what it is we want to live. Do we want to live like Ariel Henry, a Black collaborator like Mobutu, who went to their schools, got educated in schools, and never re-educated himself? and service them. Right?
Yeah.
All he needs to do is make sure his personal interests are taken care of and
Exactly.
hoard like the European. But we are African and we are a communal people. The least of the least represents who and what we are. It always has. We are the moral high ground of this planet, the parents of this planet. So may I suggest that you look closely at Haiti, at what we brought to the world. It wasn't just Black rule, independent nation. It was that the method of capitalism is not our method. And I'm not talking about socialism or any of their isms by old white men. I'm a Black woman who wants to take care of every child. I don't actually care about their color. I hate the fact that pedophilia is so high up there in this system where little white children are suffering.
Yes.
I do not think as a human being that I can live in a world where the weakest of us are being exploited.
Right.
So what is it you can do, Kenyans? That's what you asked me. So first you have to look at where you are being destroyed in your own country and look at the parallels. Let's look outwards together. I say to Haitian, the reason I'm here is because my grandfather and great-great-grandfather, they had a system. It was called Combit. When we came out of slavery, they had taken our children. And one of the first things we did was try to look for whatever we could that was left of family to live in family, because that's what we did in Africa. What we need to do as African, may I suggest, is bring that community looking out for the least of the least or the weakest of the weakest. That's what democracy should be, right? So that you have the interests of the group as the most important thing, the survival of the group as the most important thing. And that means that the strongest has to help the whole entire community with infrastructure. Shouldn't we be putting infrastructure on our own spaces, on our own lands? In Haiti, that's the only reason after 220 years of the former slave-holding folks trying to destroy us, that we're still here. My parents lived in something called La Cour, right? Like they had their homestead, and then they had what they called jardin, a space where they made their food for the community. I suggest that instead of, and I'm speaking to Haitian right now that are entering the Biden program, because right now the Eurasians are so into their wars. They need Africans, even the ones that are not trained, that are running away from the fire that the European has set in your house. And now one of the ways that they give you American citizenship is you fight in their army. Right. So we have Haitians right now in Jordan fighting Yemen, Syria, all of that. Yep. Listen, Africans, African men, African women, why not fight where you stand for your children? Why not make food where you stand? You got the most fertile land on the darn planet. Make food where you stand for your children. Instead of coming to America and doing food for the enemy of your people. Right. So my suggestion is, in Haiti, we have a way of life that has allowed us, even with all of this demeaning thing they tell you about us, right? Just look at who we are. Don't listen to their propaganda. Yes, we have this class of Uncle Toms that they put in front of you all day long. So you might think that's who we are.
Right. We have that in Africa.
I'm here. I'm not dead yet. I'm not invisible. We have a case just like Dr. Aukot has, but we don't get any publicity.
Right.
Haitians are the most, all over the world, wherever we are, we normally are at the very top of that society. Okay. Not that I want to claim her or anything, but they made Biden spokesperson an Haitian woman.
Right.
So they will use us to represent their crap. Listen, I'm talking to you, Haitian. Instead of coming to Florida to pick tomatoes, why not take your laku and make food for your children? Why are you buying this idea that working at a sweatshop and having wages is African? Is it? We are natural entrepreneurs all over the world.
Right.
Who is the backbone of Africa? Isn't it African women and the economics of them? Why is it that we let the World Bank decide for us what our economy is, and the informal economy of those women? Their lands are not counted. If my land in Haiti was counted, my people's land, we have the most land in the Caribbean. That's why they're sending all their troops against us. They want that land. And they think within the next 25 years, they're going to have it. They're going to have all the shorelines. We're living on an island, right? Just like Jamaica is on an island, but the people don't even get to see the island, the ocean.
Right.
Because it's all tourists.
Right.
And they're not allowed to step on that. They want Haiti to be that. And we say, hell to the no.
Right.
Look at your own country. Who has the best lands in your country? Don't come to help me. Help yourself so that we can help each other.
Right. Right. So this is the type of conversation we need more of.
I was going to say, I like how okay. No. I like the way you said
yeah, I think she wanted to wrap up. So let the sister wrap up first.
All right.
So there is a system, Africans, that we had before colonialism, before the High Coast got there, before the Arabs got there, before the Europeans got there. What you're calling African culture, what is it? But some sort of like European way that we have meshed and then, try to make it as if this is what we used to be. It isn't what we used to be. The wonderful thing about the amalgamated African tribes in Haiti, they came from everywhere in Africa, even as far away as East Africa. They were enslaved. They had been fighting the Arabs. Let's remember that. For over 1,000 years before the European got there. The Eurasian want the whole of Africa to be North Africa. That's it.
Right.
That's where they want you to go. And our men are definitely helping that out. So if you're interested in what is African, I suggest you look at the Africans that came from all over West Africa who decided to go back to Ézili Dantó, who decided to go back to Ogu, who decided to go back to source and went back to the land. And it's because we went back to the land and fed our children that I am here today. It may look like it's nothing, but my great-great-great-grandmother got on that donkey to go to market. And today I am an international lawyer because of the work they did.
Yep.
Let's respect that work. Let's give it value. Instead of listening to the World Bank that tells you that the only time your country has any economic value is when a Marriott hotel or a McDonald's come, and then they take the, let's say, $1 million that they make, and they average it with the little wage workers. And normally, like in Haiti, we have, in the last 30 years that I've been working there, they keep bringing up this, they're going to give you jobs. We have 13 million people. Less than 100,000 have wage jobs. And yet that's what makes up our GDP.
Right.
Not our informal economy. So I challenge Africans who are economists to give value to your land, right, your grandfather's land. It has value. I challenge you to do that, and then figure out a way to leverage that into developing that country. If you're waiting for someone to save you, Santa Claus don't exist, people. Okay, so that's what we have. We have land. Let's try to keep it. We have a culture that is used and abused by our enemies. Mm-hmm. I welcome my culture, right? My Dahomey and brothers and sisters were wearing these things way before I was. We're wearing these way before I was. So go buy Ézili Design and bring it to this century. Go buy Ézili Design and bring it to this century. You have so much. Your music, your painting, your land. I challenge Kenyans who are going to school to look back at your parents' space. Figure out a way to put infrastructure in that space where you could put a bunch of lacus together so that once you fed yourself, whatever rest is, you can organically go ahead and sell it to other spaces. Yes. Let's first take care of our own stomach, because as long as we're hungry, they can buy you.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you.
I think Lacu, Combit, Jardin, I say it constantly, right? And also understand that when you go to their schools, you're going to have to spend some time undoing what they've taught you, because it's programming.
Yes.
Sure.
For whatever reason, I was unable to be programmed. But most of our people are. So those of us who are not programmed, and I say this constantly, the lesson of the Haitian Revolution is it was free Black men. Let's say maybe me or you, Milton, and women who went back and got those that were enslaved and educated them. Jean-Jacques Dessalines was bought out of slavery by a Black man, and he took that Black man's name, a free Black man. So we have space for everybody. So if you believe that you have to work within the system, there's a space for you. Work within the system and be like Mambo Inan, the Congo woman who worked within the Catholic Church. And then did Bokai Mambo Inan, Bwakaima, Kupetet, Bulekai, burn it down. But she was in the Catholic Church. She took that from the Congo, from Queen Nzinga, who, when she saw these Neanderthals doing what they were doing, she said, what do they believe in? They said, well, they're Pope. She says, can I meet him? And then she made a deal with the Pope. You don't enslave my people and I'll become Christian. You really think she became Christian? They used that instrument. And when they came to Haiti, the Congo women and men, they used that instrument. Why is it that we're sitting around being played? The people of the Haitian Revolution played the players. And Africans, really, honestly, we need to start playing some.
Yes, absolutely.
Been out
So
here
we
for a
want to bring
long,
you.
long,
Let's
and I'm
let
just
Brother Ekuru.
that's what I leave. That I leave you with.
Okay, let's let Brother Ekuru contribute to the
Be-
same, talking beyond just the deployment of, we want to talk big, the way the sister's been.
Before Ekuru, you go, I just want to make some observations. I like that Mama Ézili Dantó said, if your liberation, my brother Aukot and me and our fellow Kenyans, if our liberation is wound up in the liberation of Haiti, then we can work together. And this is a way of thinking that I hope all Africans embrace, right? It is Ubuntu, the spirit of Ubuntu. No African, and several of our ancestors said this. Malcolm X said, as long as Africa is not free, the Africans in the US might as well forget about being free, right? In the same spirit, as long as Haiti is not free, Kenyans might as well forget about. Kenyans are not in a place to help Haiti. Let's begin with that. Kenyans are not, we're not capable. No African nation today is capable of helping another African nation. We're talking about practical, right? We're not talking about if we take our African consciousness that we can do it. If we do that, then we can do it. If we stop our alliances with the West, then we can do it. But I was going to say, as Alimadi asked the questions and as both of you are answering, one way we can help Haiti, we have a problem of guns, they say. We know that where the guns are coming. A very revolutionary way Africa can help Haiti is by doing what Nkrumah said and forming an army, a united African army, and going to Haiti and protecting Haiti's borders from the United States and from all the imperialists who are invading Haiti. That would be revolutionary. That is one way we can protect Haiti, by essentially shielding their border so that the West cannot come in. And we're talking about the physical border and the virtual one, right? In other ways that they have influence. But if Africa stands today in defense of Haiti, if Africa today recognizes Haiti as an African nation, that is one way we can start helping Haiti, by calling her one of our own. But yes, please, Ekuru Aukot. This space, my brother, is a space where you can speak your mind. So please do it. This space does not support democracy because we think it's a sham that is used against us. So please speak your mind, my brother.
But I think the sister meant democracy as practiced by the West is what you meant.
I think we should just move away from the word completely and get our own word that describes what we do.
Absolutely.
But my brother, go ahead.
So maybe I should just remind us of one of the greatest African leaders, Thomas Sankara.
Yes.
And Thomas Sankara said that if we don't fight to free ourselves, they'll fight to keep us slaves.
Right.
And I think that's probably the spirit of Pan-Africanism that we need to carry forward. And in my view, honestly, I think in Africa today, we end up with very cantankerous, feckless fellows in our leadership. And because they know their weaknesses, the West is always a predator. Can we find a puppet in Africa that we can exploit? Because I believe Africa is so rich. If we only had a conversation around even 5 African presidents that say, let's unite the African people, Black people, and let's go beyond just the borders of the continent. Go to Haiti, the Caribbean, and the rest. I think we are a force to reckon with. The unfortunate thing is that we've not had really kind of leaders, the Nkrumahs, the Sankaras, the Patrice Lumumba, and the Mandelas and others that really look at the spirit of the African people. Because to be honest with you, we don't need the West. We don't need the East. We have everything in this continent. I just recently discovered that where I come from in Turkana, the cradle of humankind, we have so much resources that if we only had a leadership that can actually, do something about those resources. I am one person who believes that Africa, we have no business being described as developing countries in Africa.
Correct.
Or black nations like Haiti. I keep telling Kenyans here, forget about the narrative here about Haiti. Haiti is not a poor country. The reason they're interested in Haiti is because of its wealth.
Correct.
So we need people or leaders that can actually, turn that round, and optimize the opportunity that we have. That is the unfortunate, the sad story about Africa and the black nations. It's like we need to decolonize our mind.
Yes.
That we have this mentality that unless we are told by the West or the white world what to do, we can't do it ourselves. Yet today, to be honest with you, today we have the advantage of knowledge. We don't have to live like 200 years like America to be America. Now we have the advantage. We know, and I keep joking. Some of my friends tell them, listen, why is it that you keep on looking at the West? Today you're wearing some of the fanciest suits, clothes. Then why are you not wearing, twigs and skin, cow skins or whatever as clothes? You've discovered that today you can dress yourself very well because you have got that knowledge. So I think for me, Africa must rise, but we must rise with a little bit of anger against the oppression, against the imperialism. And that's why I keep admiring the Burkina Faso. I keep on admiring Guinea and Mali, the language they're speaking. Because we can also not hide forever behind this thing of democracy.
Correct.
If I look at the African Charter on Democracy, Election and Democracy, it talks about unconstitutional removal of governments.
Right.
So you have people who sneak themselves into government, like, for example, our puppet president, William Ruto. Yes, he was declared duly elected by the Supreme Court of Kenya.
Right.
But look what he's doing. He is actually, first of all, not respectful of our constitution, not respectful of the will of the people of Kenya. He's being used to purportedly, to almost invade a fellow African nation in the Caribbean, just because some Mzungu in America has told him to do so.
Correct.
So we really need to go back to our consciousness as a people.
Consciousness, yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And may I just add quickly on the issue of democracy, it is a telltale sign when you find that in the case of Niger, the people who are crying for against the coup, the loudest are France and the United States. They kept talking about the duly elected President Bazoum, when hundreds of thousands of people are showing up to the streets to support the change in the leadership. But please continue, brother.
So for me, for the longest time, we've had African countries or black nations hiding behind the idea of democracy, but they don't really even live up to that democracy.
Exactly.
Right.
So that's why for me, I say, if you look at the constitution in Africa post the last maybe 20 years, a lot of them now embed the idea of sovereign authority on the people. So the question then becomes, if you are democratically elected and you don't live up to those democratic values, what is wrong when people take up arms and decide we are kicking you out? You see, in the Constitution of Kenya, Article 1 talks about all sovereign authority vests in the people of Kenya to exercise it directly or indirectly through their elected representatives. Meaning, therefore, that the leadership is an employee of the people. Now, if your employee steals from you or fails to work as per the terms of reference that you gave the employee, you should be able to fire the employee.
Exactly.
And we have in Article 104, what we call the recall clause, that the people of Kenya are able to actually recall you and fire you. So in the context of what's happening in Haiti today, vis-a-vis the role of our president, William Ruto, it is clear that William Ruto is not acting as an African. Absolutely not. This was a roadside conversation with the imperialist called Joe Biden, who then promised him money. And because we know that he's a greedy fellow,
Yes.
his middle name is actually corruption or theft, if you like. He looked at the dollars and he thought, okay, I'm going to send Kenyan policemen to Haiti. And it didn't come from the people of Kenya. And this is one of the reasons why I went to court to say, even if you were to consider deploying police officers to Haiti, we the people must have a say. Because this is a service to us. I mean, we would love to help the people of Haiti restore peace, tranquility in Haiti, but not in the way in which the USA and the UN is suggesting. Because that is a recolonization of our minds, of our people. And I really look forward to a more robust conversation where Black people can say no to this nonsense anymore. Because trust me, we are very powerful. If only we can unite as Black people.
And realize our potential
In this continent, we will do wonders.
I'm going back to you. This notion, or the fact that this exists in the Kenyan Constitution, that the police are to serve, right? I don't think you all sent the memo to the Kenyan police when you wrote the Constitution. I think maybe the Constitution Committee of Kenya should do an event where you brief the Kenyan police on what that article in the Constitution says, so that they can act accordingly, right? They do not serve, and now I'm talking to them, and you know what? There's another topic that I would like us to talk about as we discuss this, and I'll quickly mention it as we continue to talk about this, and then I'll ask Mama Dantó to speak on this because it's not getting enough media. The question I'll ask her. But to do what we do, for the Friends of Congo to do what they do, for all Africans to stand and stand against imperialism, puts us on the list of Homeland Security watch list. That's what that does for us. And my question to all of you Africans is, what are we going to do to defend us, those of us who speak up? Because you all are scared. I don't care what you want to say you're doing, and why, which is why you're not talking. It's because you're scared. I'm just telling you now, fear is the reason why you're not speaking up, because there's no other reason. Your people are being killed in Congo. Your people are being killed in Haiti. You're being exploited. Your reasons are taken. So make it make sense to me that fear is not the only reason why you're not speaking up. Be it fear of losing a job, fear of losing your life, whatever fear it is, right? So are we going to continue allowing fear to control how we move, or are we going to stand up for who we are, our African sovereignty? Mama Dantó, this is not getting enough attention. You and your colleague, Evel Fanfan, because of the work you have been doing, he is a lawyer in Haiti. Now, Ariel Henry is required to appear in front of Judge Merlin Belabre in a few days on February 5th for his violation of the Constitution, the Haitian Constitution. Please speak to that. And for Africans who are listening, by the way, when I put the links, Mama Ézili Dantó's link and Brother Ekuru Aukot's link, it's so that you who have means, you who have skill, can reach out to them and offer your service so that you can support the work that they're doing. Because I know, just from speaking to Mama Ézili Dantó, she is working constantly to do what she's doing, and she could use some help, whichever way it comes, be it funding. And I know that she has been collecting funding to support the work that they do. So please reach out to them. The Beyoncés of the world, the Oprahs of the world, all of you with your millionaires bragging all over the place how you made it, show us how you're going to support the community by sending a check to what actually is helping us, and not a repetition of Kalapapel. Please, Ézili Dantó, speak to your case in Haiti.
Yes. So tomorrow, there is, we are on the docket which is another step for Haiti. So we will see what happens. If the HLLN government will come into court to answer the charges that they have committed high treason by asking a foreign nation without any constitutional authority to come into Haiti, and with no involvement of the Haitian people in any manner. So yes, that case for high treason is scheduled for tomorrow. But in Haiti, we have an insecurity problem. And we presently have the clerks of the court are on strike. So we will see. There's always an excuse as to why court is not held.
Right.
So those are the things that we have to deal with as we push an establishment that controls 98% of the economy of our nation. And they give the buffer races that economy, right? The Syrians, the Lebanese, and the Israelis control 98%. They are the economic, and this is what the United States and the Eurasians are calling fair. When you have immigrants that are helping U.S. in their Middle Eastern wars be given sanctuary in Haiti or in some African nation or in Dominican Republic, just so that they bring down the masses of Black women, children in those countries, and then tell you that it's okay not to rule your own nation. Mm-hmm. It's okay. They talk to you about one person, one vote in theory, but they're too high tech to live that. So it's a theory, right? IT used to directly vote for president. By the time the United States finished after the second coup d'etat, today less than 17% of the people go to the polls. Because the United States itself doesn't have a one person, one vote system. And yet there's no intellectuals talking about that when they talk about democracy. They have an electoral college. Their system is about maintaining the establishment and the elite, the billionaire class in power, who pay no taxes while I pay 30-40% of my income. And so does the other working class people. So we want to sit there and elevate this system in any way, shape, or form. I am that lawyer that says no, not only to the UN, but to the undemocratic veteran bureaucracy in America that maintains the colonialism that Lumumba was trying to destroy. And that imperialism, and I mean, you have academics, think tanks in this century who are all beholden to the establishment. And the NGOs, I call them NGOs, right? So as long as you are part of that NGO space, they tell you you can't say anything political. And then they've got you. And we have no intellectuals running around telling people, hey, you start a charity or an orphanage, right? Forget about saying anything about the corrupt politicians. They'll take that money from you in a minute. And we still don't get it. So they call us the aid state. And yet, all we are is a money laundering space.
Correct.
Where folks in Washington raise money, say they're giving it to Africa, and then it goes right back into their hands, and it creates employment for their establishment class. That's what the system is about. I'm just here to tell it to you. But let me say this. So tomorrow they're supposed to, we'll see what happens. Maybe you'll have me back and I'll tell you what happened. But right now, I have no faith in our corrupt politicians or judges who are appointed by HLLN. I just don't have it. Ekuru might give me a little inspiration. Judge Mitwa gave me lots of inspiration. But at the end of the day, I know how many of our people are bought off. And I also know something greater than that. Forget our people that are bought off. Because when I came into this deal, the ancestors gave me an assignment. Because sometimes when you're small and you've got to be focused about what you do. And for me, imperialism is run with collaborators, our own people, our own family. And my choice was to go after the collaborator or to go after the respondent superior. And as a lawyer, I always go after the respondent superior, the deep pocket, the one paying him and employing him. Right? That doesn't mean I don't look at HLLN and sue him and his whole entire government. But most of my career is standing up and looking what Biden,
the source,
what the core group, what they have done, and how, because the media is not focused on them, because the media is always focused on the incompetent Black man. Yeah. So I try not to focus on the incompetent Black man. I focused on the Neanderthal vampire who hires him, who trains him, who put him where he is. And I know as a strategist that if we could fail and destroy that which employs evil, then that which is employed will have no job.
Correct.
So that's kind of what I ask people to do. Focus, people. Focus. And something else that Dr. Aukot was talking about, consciousness. It starts as a child. You see, and if you look at a child, a baby, they see the visuals. They see that what's supposedly white is pure, and what is darker and brown is not. They see those visuals. We have to create new visuals for our children. New visuals, right? That subconscious space, because that's why they're leaving Africa or Haiti to run to the white land. That's why I speak Creole with an English accent, with an American accent, right? So yes, we're supposed to be seeing a judge tomorrow. I doubt it, but it's out there. I'm pushing it as much as I can. What can you do for us? Understand, they are not giving us the amount of publicity, for instance, they give in Kenya, right? Maybe that took them by surprise, okay, because it was definitely surprising. But we are not surprising. We're always here going after these folks, right? The UN, I've sued them for cholera and killing over 30,000 Haitians. And now they want to come back again with no justice. You know how many people the UN and its troops have killed Haitians, not only with cholera, but between 2004 and 2006, the UN brought in another buffer race class, because that's what they do. They brought in, the nearest to a Black was the Brazilians. Okay, now they want to bring the Kenyans. They wanted to go a little darker. But they brought the Brazilians. In exchange, they told the Brazilians they would have a permanent seat at the UN Security Council. And they told Lula's brother-in-law, who owns the biggest sweatshop in Brazil, that he was going to get our labor in Haiti.
Yep.
But then when the Brazilian soldier said, a general said, listen, these people are less violent than Brazil. Right. I'm not going to be doing this job for you and be put in front of an International Crimes Tribunal. That's what the Brazilian soldiers did. And when they did that, one of them suddenly was supposedly committed suicide. That was a Syrian Lebanese that did that, because they brought them in to maintain the economic interests of the Syrian Lebanese and the United States strategic interests. So we've lived this whole thing with the Brazilians. At least the Brazilian did say no, but they did end up dropping bombs in Cité Soleil and killing between 2004 and 2006 over 14,000 Haitians. Nobody talks about that. And then you had over 3 million people say got sick from cholera from the UN. And then who knows where that earthquake came from, right? Because we are on an island. It never touched the Dominican Republic. And they're still digging in our waters. And we have two fault lines. One that's hasn't gone out in the north for 200 years. And when it went, that's how we lost the Dominican Republic. So they create these seismic weather things. And then they came back, the vultures came back, and they raised $13 billion. And Biden was in office with Obama as vice president. And they said they were going to build Haiti back better, 2010. Has Haiti been built back better? Hell no, but they made $13 billion. That's what we are. When the United States needs to get something from China, they would say, if you don't keep your wages low at 26 cents or 20 cents an hour, we will bring the companies to IET. That's how we're used. They sell us to Kenya and Ruto. And then you see on television, on video, Dominican Republic saying to Kenya, if you pacify IET for us, we're going to have a commercial relationship. We are used that way to give people not only commercial relationship, but the benefits and the awards of empire. So if you're a collaborator in Africa and somebody brings, well, listen, IET is African. Let's put IET in the AU.
Right.
You have a whole bunch of Africans saying, oh, no, we'd rather put Israel in there. Not IET. It's way over there. That's what we suffer. We are sold everywhere so that the white man can maintain his white supremacy. But I've got news for you. We are Dessalines descendants. We survive. We started out with 250,000 people. We lost. We started out with 500,000 in 1791. In that 13-year war, we lost half of our population. And even with all the terror and horror my people have lived through.
Ézili, somebody wants to say hello to you.
Hi, she's being shy. I like your kafta.
Thank you.
I love it. It's pretty. How are you?
I'm fine.
Are you going to take on this work when we get older? You're going to be the one who sits in that chair and talks about these things? Hopefully we don't need to talk about them, right?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
What's your name?
Alakara.
Oh, my goodness. Beautiful. Wonderful.
Okay, thank
Yes,
you.
so I was talking about this. So, no, we survived. Bye. Yes, we've survived. Today we have nearly 19, almost 20 million Haitians all over the world. We have 13 in IET, 13 million, and maybe about 5 to 6 million abroad. And whatever I don't get done, we fight from one generation to the next. And when I sit here, it's because there is blood behind me.
Correct.
And all of you. So I just think that the 21st century has a lot of promise with what Ekuru Aukot has done, what the Francophone, what Niger, all of that. And we have to start thinking, is what's going on in those countries. Because what is democracy if you're not helping the most people? Like, we should bring that as a value, that we say, if you're helping, because I see that young man, I'm going to say his name wrong, Captain Tratori. I always see what Tratori. I always see that going to schools, talking to the young. That's what we have to do. We have to give them something to look at that's successful and that's about us, our value, because our life is not valued in this larger society. But let's start thinking we are the global majority.
Yes.
Because we are.
Yes, we are.
It's true.
So, Brother Ekuru, any additional observations, as our time is also running low, so.
And also point out, how can we help you? Like, when we talk about, we think about the global African community, how can we help you do the work? Make it easier for you.
Yeah. So there's so many ways you can help. I mean, for example, I really enjoyed the support from Sister Ézili Dantó, especially the information bit. That enabled us to be able to make a very robust argument before court. And we are able to really convince the court that, listen, this is the situation in Haiti, because a lot of people did not know. So let's just, I mean, I think we really need to keep talking to each other.
Right.
We are not talking enough. We are not having a conversation. We are not saying, how can we pull together? Because the truth for the matter is, as Black people, as the Black race, we are not the favorite in the world. Yet we have so much potential. And I think one of the things that we also need to be able to speak about is what we are sitting on as a people, as a Black race. We actually underestimate the power that we have. And I think the more we speak about that, the better. And I would say that I wish as many of us as possible can actually stick out our neck, because these people are not as intelligent as we are. We are probably even more intelligent than them. But why is it that we are allowing ourselves? I mean, there's so much cowardice in us black people. Yet, we are as intelligent, even more intelligent than these folks. So, of course, material things done, but you see, for me, the biggest support I could get from the Black race is just that unity, that support, that actually we are in this together. We are not going to let the nation of Haiti be exploited. We're not going to let Kenyan nation to be used by these imperialists.
Correct.
I think if we can have that conversation going on, that for me is the greatest help that you can actually achieve. For me, at my age, I like to say, I fear nothing. The only thing standing between me and life right now is death, and that thing can happen anytime. So for as long as I live an extra minute on this earth, I'll have to do the right thing. And the right thing right now is to defend the African race, the Black nation, and to encourage the spirit of Pan-Africanism, as was founded by some of our forefathers. So that is the kind of support I really want. It's not about money. Money won't get us anywhere. Of course, we still need money to be able to do one or two things, but I didn't spend much money defending this case myself. I mean, I got support from friends, but for me, what helped me the most is that spirit, that I had support. And I think if we can really consolidate that unity of Black people, trust me, we can rule this world. I do believe we can actually, control this world.
Right.
We are just not confident enough to say, as Black people, we are capable.
Right.
And I think that is the spirit that we need to awaken amongst us, Black people.
Right.
And that for me will be the greatest support I will ever have. If today we can encourage this conversation in the Caribbean, in the rest of Africa, that, we are looking into a sister nation, a brother nation that's being exploited because of the wealth they are sitting on.
Mm-hmm.
If we can all come together, trust me, we'll defeat them.
Absolutely.
And I think for me, that's the
freedom is
greatest
a
support I will ask for.
I'd like to say, as you talk about, and I don't know the details of you not needing money to do the case, but as you talk about it, I want to address that. Probably it's because the people who offered help did not ask for payment, right? And this is something that we need to start thinking about, where I reach out to Mama Dantó, I say, listen, I have a skill, I have some time to spare, I can write a draft of this. Brother Aukot, what do you need to write? What do you need to research? I have 10 hours to spare. I have 5 hours I have 2 hours to spare to look into this aspect of Haiti. Like research, go online, give you the details, give you a summary. This is without wanting payment, Africans. Like all of you are all, I could name names, but I'm not going to name names. Those Africans who must be paid before they open their mouths, right? Let's stop that. Ali Mahdi, and then we'll have Mama Dantó say her last words.
Oh, no, I think this was a very good conversation. In fact, I would like to continue this conversation. I have a radio show on WBAI.
Yeah, exactly.
So if both of you are available on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, it's from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. So we could continue the same conversation. It would definitely be shorter because, that's how radio works. But those would be my final words. We need to have more of this kind of, one of the most disappointing things, and I was listening to the sister talking about the available land in Africa. African countries collectively import $35 billion in food every year. I think that is one of the greatest crimes that is ongoing right now in Africa today. But go ahead, over to you, sister.
I'm glad you made that invite, because then Mama Dantó can highlight what happens tomorrow. So thank you for making that invite. And please show up, my brother and sister. I'm going to be texting you. Please say yes to Ali Mahdi's.
Okay, just give me heads up. I can see from my diary and my Tuesday looks okay. So
Jumanne tafadhali. Jumanne saa 10 za huku, count 8 hours after that, tafadhali weka kando.
What time is that Kenyan time? Mimi, I feel
Let me tell you right now. As Mama Dantó speaks, I'll count the hours for you and tell you what time it is, Kenya. It might actually be too late for you, but let me see what Mama Dantó says. All right.
Okay.
Thank you. I want to thank the people of Kenya. We have been forsaken by so many folks in the Caribbean. But I see this hashtag Kenyans for Haiti, and it warms my heart, because we are constantly being destroyed. So I want to say thank you to Kenyans for Haiti. I want to say thank you to Judge Chacha Mitwa, of course, my ancestral brother and the Third Way Alliance. He's right. This is what needs to be. We have to assist each other. And one of the things that I want to finish with is that during the Haiti revolution, the Africans came together as one, from the Congo, from Dahomey, from Niger, from all over Africa. And so all of us, we took the name when Jean-Jacques Dessalines created this empire of liberty for Black people, not a republic. He said, all Haitians shall be known by the appellation Black. He didn't say we are going to be Congo, because there were a lot of Congos fighting. There were a lot of Dahomean fighters. There were a lot from everywhere. But what he did was he picked the name of the people who were there before us. Ayi is a Fran African name. It's really important to know that we are the parent of the universe, and we were in the Americas before Columbus. So we were in Haiti. What they call the Taínos is another part of the Eurasians that intermingled with the Blacks who were there. And then you have what they call Native Americans. But we were here. Wherever you step, African, you were already there. You have an ancestor who was already there. We didn't have immigration laws. If we did, the Europeans wouldn't be able to get out of their caves. So I say to you, Africans at the African Union, Africans in the Caribbean, the 15 nations of the Caribbean, the only successful revolution was when Africans got together and looked outwards together against their enemies who's using skin color and pigmentation against them, and said, no. Dessalines said, we are Black. We're not mulatto. Remember, we had quadroons and mulattoes and octoroons and all of this. We're not mixed. We are Black. And so, Black people, my African brothers, ancestral brothers in Africa, let's figure out a way to look at and put our liberty first. Food, shelter, security. Let's make 2 or 3 things first. Food, shelter, security. And the education of our people. To know who we are before the High Coast got there in Kemet. Before the Arabs spent 1,200 years and then came the Europeans. And now all of North Africa is something else. And then we have all these Abrahamic religions that tell you that I don't exist. Ézili Dantó is not here, and the Black woman is not mother of all that exist. So I ask you to go back to who you were. And when you do, you will free not just the African woman's children, but all sentient beings, and live in harmony with the planet. Planet Earth is asking for us to do that. Africans, parents of the universe, let's step up and let's stop killing each other. So EziliDantó.com, we are on social media. I would appreciate it if you would elevate this case. Keep supporting Dr. Aukot in case there's going to be some sort of a appeal. We're going to be there.
Right.
Thank you. I'm told they may be growing cold feet on the appeal, but if they appeal, we'll still wait for them.
Do you want to say something quick about that? We are a little over the time, but do you want to speak to that quickly?
No. I mean, just to say that they have filed a notice of appeal, but they have not really put in the appeal documents themselves. But I suspect it's just chest thumping, trying to save face. But either way, we are waiting for them, and we will still fight this to the very end.
Great. Thank you so much for the work that you're both doing. Thank you for being here. Mama Dantó, if you need to come here and speak on anything, you have my number. Always reach out. We will bring you on. Brother Ali Madi.
Kwaherini, thank you. As Samora Machini used to say, Aluta
Asante sana.
And I always in the I don't even know, sometimes I walk out of my African consciousness and I'm trying to be modest, right? And not ask for support. We need support on Kumbukeni. I'm not going to say we don't need support. And we are talking about money support. So please join our Patreon family and join for the monthly membership there. We start at $3 so that you can support the work we're doing. Look out for our website. Once we have the website, you can donate 100% to it. We'll figure out how, because I know people want to get that tax deduction for donating to support, right? So we'll figure out how we can get that done. But either way, you want to see this work, you enjoy this, you don't want to see the channel go, support it financially, okay? Asanteni, kwaherini, siku njema.
Asante.
Please stay on Ézili Dantó and Aukot, please.